This looks like an old school fantasy. And there's witches in sailor uniforms, even though everyone else is in long clothing. It's kind of bland. Hello fellow anime geeks, welcome to another first impression video in my fall 2020 series where I try every anime series premiere that I can to hopefully offer a bit more information on the ongoing season. Per usual, I'll be organizing my thoughts by answering these 4 questions, and today I'm talking about King's Raid, Ishi wo Tsugumono-tachi, or King's Raid, Successors of the Will. The mal tags are action, adventure, magic, and fantasy, and I would completely agree and say that this is a fantasy action adventure. In fact, it feels very much like a nostalgic fantasy from the late 90s, early 2000s. The colors are kind of washed out and muted. The art style and the music feels very much like the standard for action shonen from that time. And even the storyline feels like this melodramatic plot straight out of a manga from that time period. So I thought that this was either a new adaptation for an older manga or a remake, kind of like Orphen, although that one turned out a bit awkward too. But no, this is based on a mobile RPG, so it's a game adaptation. And I really should have guessed because the character designs just really do not match the story. There's this fantasy world, so everyone is dressed fantasy medieval, or Middle Ages, or schoolgirl witch? Our protagonist is clearly marked. He's wearing armor that's like way fancier than any of the knights that he's supposed to be an apprentice to. The plot is literally about collecting different items from different lands in order to prepare for a last boss fight. And he gets assigned some companions sworn to carry his burdens, and here we go! The subplots are a cheesy mishmash of fantasy tropes, also straight out of an early 2000s anime. A cast-out uprising, a mysterious baddie obsessed with our protagonists, politics, orphans, the loss of a parent, you're special, the Bishoujo childhood friend, a magical father figure, insert randomly gruesome fight, stargazing, going on a mad vengeance rampage over someone you just met, winning people over with one conversation, I'm gonna protect everyone. A cool sword, and my personal favorite, because magic. Basically, imagine Kaido from Saiki Kusuo telling you what he did over the weekend. And yet, despite all of these tropes, it still felt pretty bland. So obviously I don't think that this is very original. I mean, it just ticks all of the fantasy checkboxes. And at one point, it just completely stops to rip off the Lord of the Rings. But it's okay, because we're gonna call them Trents, not Ents. If I was pressed to pick something, I would probably say all of the different points of view in this show. I mean, there's the protagonist, there's his childhood friends, there's the dark elves, there's now the wood elves. I mean, the opening and the ending are like for 2 completely different shows with 2 completely different protagonists. But now that I know that it's about a game, it makes sense, right? These must all just be playable options. So, is it worthwhile? Well, I'm gonna have to say no for me. I just found it so incredibly cheesy and the plotline so predictable because it's based on a game plotline. Games are just so difficult to adapt, so I do have to say that this is actually not the worst game adaptation that I've seen. Shironeko! The pacing was actually pretty good, and I didn't feel like they assumed that the fan base for the game was going to be the target demographic, so they actually had real decent exposition built into the plot and into the character conversations. Although I thought that the lore that exposition revealed was pretty goofy. I mean, I think that if you are a fan of the game, you might enjoy this, because like I said, the actual adaptation process was pretty decent. But for me, even though I'm into fantasy, this isn't the one. And on that note, I'll catch you in the next video. If he's just an apprentice, then why is his armor so different? Is this another one where the protagonists are not the people I thought were the protagonists? It just doesn't make sense. Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? I'm trying to decide what this is. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Is this the truth? That's Klaus. Oh no, wait, that's... I'm confused.